Male 27 and female 28 with 3 kids. So that's their situation. One income making $4.6K a month. I just finished step 4 of the FOO and I'm maxing out my HSA. How do we balance saving for a house and taking advantage of the Roth IRA? Thanks for all you do. Good question. Where does that house come into the FOO?
Bo, I just want to have one little, first of all, JW, kudos to you. By the way, clearly messy middle.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everything here, full embracing of the messy middle where he's short on time, short on money. But I want to give JW a prop shout out that this is the time after you've funded step 4, your emergency reserves, is the time you start figuring out how does housing and cars, if the home purchase and car purchases and those things, you've got to have a good emergency fund before you even start making those life decisions.
Yeah, I think what you have to do, JW, is you and your spouse have to sit down and you have to figure out, okay, what are our goals? What are our life goals? I mean, obviously we want to be financially independent. We want to retire one day, but we also have this family. It says, I think, was there 3 kids, young family, young kids, and we'd like to have a home. We'd like to have a place where we can call our own and we can begin to raise our family. And I just want to pause for a moment. For first-time home buyers, it's still hard out there.
Yeah,
it is
really
a
hard.
difficult market. Home prices have gone up. I mean, they're not rising quite as rapidly as they were, but they're still expensive. Interest rates have come down a touch, but they're still high. It is really, really hard to get into a home right now. And I just want you to recognize that we recognize that. We know that home ownership perhaps is more difficult today than it has been in the past. But we do have some rules and some guidance that we would give you when it comes time to buy a home. If you go out to our website, moneyguide.com/resources, we have a whole home buying checklist of some questions that you can ask yourself to make sure this is the right time and you're approaching this the right way. Another thing that we do is when you do think about, okay, how do we save for this? How do we prioritize? A lot of folks out there will tell you that when you buy a house, you have to put 20% down as a down payment so that you can avoid PMI. And while it is true, it's great to avoid PMI if you can. For a lot of people, putting 20% down is just unrealistic. For most of the folks here that work at our firm, they did not put 20% down on the first house. So we believe that for a first-time home purchase, it's okay if you can only put 3.5% down or 5% down, so long as the monthly housing cost does not exceed 25% of your gross income. If you can put that down payment down and keep the housing parameter in there, what it allows you to do is if you and your spouse sit down and say, man, okay, this is our focus. We want to get into a house. We want to save for down payment. We just got emergency fund funded. We're putting money in the HSA. Okay, now we're going to start just plowing money away towards this household, towards this 3.5%. So that you can do that, get the down payment down, get in the house, and immediately get back to the financial order of operations, funding your Roths, and beginning to build wealth towards the future. I think the question I have to have is, where's the priority? How soon does this housing thing need to happen?
That's the question, because that's what I was going to ask is, if this is something that's 12 to 18 months in the future, it's probably going to be an all hands on deck, is that you're essentially pausing step 5 and going and dumping as much money into your step 4 to boost up emergency reserves, because a portion of that's going to be earmarked for a down payment, the 3 to 5% on the house. But then if this is something that's 3 to 5 years in the future, then now you have a little different. You can essentially do both. You can set up a monthly amount that's going and boosting up cash, reserves that's going to be used for the down payment. But then a portion of this could be going towards step 5 of the financial order of operations with Roth IRAs and HSAs. The big thing is even if it's something that's 12 to 18 months, I just want you to get back on track as fast as possible. And that's why they're also discipline is going to come into play, is because I can go ahead and tell you it's a slippery slope when you start looking at housing, is because it feels like for just a few $100 more here, a few $100 more there, you could get this, you could get that. And all of a sudden this thing starts spiraling out of control on what your purchase price is of the home. So be disciplined on what you're buying. I want you to get as much as you can, especially with three kids in the house. You're going to, it's not a tiny home you're probably looking for. You're trying to get a home that lets you everybody, have the right space, but do it in a healthy way. Just make sure you're trying to balance that so you don't bite off too much, because I don't want you to be house rich, life poor because you got too much, but I also want you to be reasonable enough that you don't buy a house that you're like, man, if we'd have just been a little wiser, maybe saved for an extra 6 months, maybe we could have gotten a house so we don't have to move 7 years down the road. We could actually stay in this house for 15 years and really make some great memories and get back on track that much sooner.
I love how astute our financial mutant audience is. Chris in the chat said this. He said, bought in February 2023, put 10% down. PMI is only $38 a month.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone tell you 20% is the only way. I love that because a lot of us we get scared of something that's irrational. Oh my gosh, I can't pay PMI. And here's Chris saying, yeah, it was an extra $40 a month, but because I was willing to do that, I was able to get into a house much sooner than I would have been able to otherwise.
And also, I think that, there's a lot of research when you look at what, like the Fed, when they release net worth value, the majority of Americans, all their net worth is in their house. And I do think that owning a house in the long term, especially if you're setting roots in the area and you're trying to raise a family, there's a lot of benefit to getting into that ownership side of things, because not only does it allow you to set down roots in the neighborhood and the area you're trying to grow up and make friends and family, there's also a capital appreciation over the long term that kind of just happens behind the scenes, but don't force it. And that's why, back to kind of bringing it full circle, like Bo was talking about, make sure you're going and looking at our checklist so that you have resources, you're protecting yourself from the emotions because this is a big life decision. So make sure you go out to moneyguy.com/resources to really just check yourself, but also know you have everything lined up.